Minister of Malaysia, Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Hanifah Haji Aman, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Malaysia and Chair of the Extraordinary Session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers on the situation of the Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar, His Excellency Dr. Yusuf bin Ahmad Al Uthaymin, Secretary General of the OIC, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by expressing my deep appreciation to all of you for joining us here in Kuala Lumpur for this extraordinary session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers. The circumstances that have brought us together are rather tragic, but it is hoped that this gathering will help find a way to alleviate the suffering of our brothers, of our sisters, the Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar. This is one of the first major meetings being held under the auspices of the OIC since the appointment of His Excellency Dr. Yusuf bin Ahmad Al Uthaymin as Secretary General. Your Excellency, I'm delighted you have been able to join us today, and I'm confident that under your stewardship, this noble organization will continue to achieve even greater heights in the cause of Islam and the Ummah. Malaysia has always been amongst the staunchest of supporters of the OIC, as far back as its founding, when our first Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman, was elected the organization's first Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, the humanitarian crisis in Myanmar's Arakan state is the cause of great and immediate concern to us all. The loss of life cannot be disputed. And in Islam, the right of life or the right to life is the first and foremost basic right, as stated in verse 32 of Surah Al-Ma'idah. Whoever kills a soul, it is as if he had slain mankind entirely. And whoever saves one, it is as if he had saved mankind entirely. Far too many people have lost their lives in Myanmar. Many have suffered appalling deaths, and those that have lived through the atrocities have witnessed or endured unspeakable cruelty. That in itself is a reason, and a very compelling reason, why we, all of us, cannot keep silent. At the same time, those of us who are based in the region have learned, and we've learned from history, and I believe I speak for all neighboring countries when I say that we want to avoid a repeat of the 2015 boat people crisis. This not only caused untold suffering to the people who were forced to leave their homes, but had the potential to impact the security and stability of the broader region. In recent years, Malaysia has been on the front line when it comes to the irregular movement of people. As it is, we are hosting around 56,000 displaced Rohingya men, women, and children who had to flee from the Arakan state. The government, and indeed the people of Malaysia, are willing to shoulder the financial and social responsibility of providing shelter and basic necessities to our Rohingyas brothers and sisters. It is the morally right thing to do. However, the fact that they have been forced to flee is a tragic indictment of the situation they faced at home. To make matters worse, the Rohingyas have become easy targets for human trafficking networks. In many cases, they were held for weeks while smugglers extort more money from their families back home. During their perilous journeys, they risk abuse by smugglers and worse, death by drowning. We fear that if the situation of the Rohingya Muslim minority in Rakhine State is not properly addressed, militant elements could infiltrate and possibly radicalize this oppressed community. OIC member states are well aware that terrorist organizations such as Daesh could seek to take advantage of the situation. They should concern the international community as a whole, as the threat of a new home for terrorist groups has the potential to cause death and destruction well beyond this region. Ladies and gentlemen, Myanmar has no firmer friend than Malaysia. We supported our near neighbors when they were alone and friendless. We fought for the inclusion in ASEAN. We resisted efforts to punish and isolate them. And we did so because we recognize that Myanmar is too large, too important, too significant to be left out in the cold. It is part of our region and a part of our community of nations. We recognize the unique characteristics that it possesses, its people, its natural resources, and of course, its strategic location. Among the member states of ASEAN, it is alone in sharing land borders with both China and India. Just as significantly, we recognize and continue to recognize the resilience and commitment of the Myanmar people, which enable them to shake off the chains of dictatorship in a peaceful, moderate, and mature manner. The political process that they have made since then is testimony to our faith in Myanmar, its government, and its people. It is a source of pride and hope for all those who believe in peace over violence and indeed democracy over dictatorship. So, let me say this. As a true and long-standing friend to Myanmar, I say this, and I say this from the bottom of my heart. It is time to end this crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, how should it be resolved? For a start, the killing must stop. Period. The violation of women and girls must stop. Period. The persecution of your fellow men and women simply on the grounds that they are Muslim must stop. Period. The denial of basic rights to your fellow human beings must stop. Period. I say to our friends in Myanmar, prove yourselves worthy of your great traditions and history again. Be equal to the words your father, the father of your independence, General Aung San, delivered in 1946. And I quote what he said. Nowadays, all the world over, we cannot confine the definition of a nationality to the narrow bounds of race, religion, and others. Nations are extending their rights of their respective communities even to others who may not belong to them except by their mere residence amongst them and their determination to live and to be with them. End of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, while we have been compelled to take a public position on the situation in Myanmar, I wish to make clear that there is no stronger supporter of the principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of sovereign countries than Malaysia. Having said that, I wish to emphasize that if the domestic affairs of a country results in instability which affects other countries in the region, they cannot be expected to remain silent or hope for the best and pray that it does not get worse. Surely, under that circumstances, they should be given the latitude to express their concerns effectively in a manner that would help address the pressing humanitarian situation. Should it not be within the rights of the affected countries to mobilize support from the international community to end this or to this end? Malaysia or ASEAN has every right to raise this issue. And I was therefore glad that this was recognized by the foreign ministers meeting in Yangon last month. At that meeting, our foreign minister, Dato' Sri Anifah Aman, called for an independent group of eminent ASEAN persons to address the crisis, and quite correctly said that we, as ASEAN, must do so collectively. The ASEAN Human Rights Declaration could not be clearer. It states that every person has an inherent right to life protected by law, a right to personal liberty and security, a right to freedom of religion, a right not to be subjected to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. That, ladies and gentlemen, is embedded in the ASEAN Charter. No one could say that these rights are currently being adequately defended in a Rakhine state. It is not just about Rohingyas being Muslim. We want them to live as Muslims are instructed to do, as responsible minority, fully respecting the laws of the country in a non-Muslim state. But the current situation is a stain on ASEAN itself and on the community we declared here in Kuala Lumpur, in this very building at the end of 2015 under Malaysia's chairmanship. We in ASEAN, ladies and gentlemen, must live up to what the community stands for. Otherwise, it would be a community in name only, a disgrace to the visionaries who came together to found ASEAN 50 years ago. We will have failed them if we do not do our utmost to avert the catastrophe that has been unfolding for the Rohingyas. Ladies and gentlemen, in the same spirit of openness, it is important to note that there have been some positive developments and some efforts by the government of Myanmar to tackle the issue. We are encouraged by the establishment of the Ministry of Ethnic Affairs, the Central Committee for the Implementation of Peace, Stability and Development in a Rakhine State, and a Rakhine State Advisory Commission. However, we believe that much more can and much more needs to be done to resolve the problems in the Rakhine State. We strongly urge the government of Myanmar to provide unimpeded access for the delivery of humanitarian aid to the affected areas. At the same time, we call on the government of Myanmar to facilitate the safe and dignified return of refugees to their homes and communities. The root causes of this problem must be addressed urgently in their entirety, with a view to finding mutually favorable, long-term and comprehensive solutions for all the parties involved. We call on the government of Myanmar to cease all discriminatory actions and attacks against the Rohingyas immediately and for the perpetrators to be brought to justice. This must happen now, not in a few months' time, when Kofi Annan's committee is due to report. No people who are being persecuted should be expected to endure months of committee meetings before they are afforded protection. The government of Myanmar disputes the terms genocide and ethnic cleansing. But whatever the terminology, the Rohingyas cannot wait. Not when they and their families risk being burned alive in their homes. Not when their wives and daughters are being violated. Not when the communities are being destroyed. There are people left destitute and dispersed. Not when the future of the young people, their education and what they should be and what should be the hopeful dawn of their adult lives is being destroyed before their very eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia has consistently voiced its concern about the plight of the Rohingyas. Furthermore, we have and will continue to provide humanitarian assistance through our NGOs as well as temporary shelter for Rohingyas migrants currently in Malaysia, pending the resettlement by UNHCR or eventual return to Myanmar. And our assistance in Myanmar is not only for Muslims, but for all who need it in the affected areas. Presently, Mercy Malaysia has successfully established static mobile clinics in Sitwe, Rakhine State, in collaboration with local NGOs as part of its ongoing efforts to render healthcare services to internally displaced persons in Myanmar. And we are planning for a flotilla to bring aid, food to Rakhine State. And I'm pleased to be able to announce that Malaysia will contribute a sum of 10 million ringgit to assist in humanitarian efforts and social rehabilitation projects in Rakhine State. The fund will be used to build infrastructure such as educational and medical institutions and will contribute to development there and improve the quality of life of its people. Malaysia will also continue to extend our support to human resource development through the Malaysia Technical Cooperation Program, MTCP. Currently, Myanmar is the largest recipient of MTCP, and the capacity building initiatives it provides are an important part of striving for a viable long-term solution. I encourage and I welcome any pledges of assistance from other member states. Indeed, I call on the OIC, in the spirit of Islamic solidarity, to recognize that it is our collective responsibility to assist our brothers and our sisters in the Rakhine State. It is incumbent upon us to do all we can to save them from the humanitarian tragedy that they are suffering and to help provide them with a future that is safe, sustainable, and characterized by the dignity that should be the birthright of every human being. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia has always subscribed to the concept of wasatiyah, or moderation, which espouses the values, mutual respect, understanding, and tolerance. In line with this, we believe that any discord should be resolved peacefully in accordance with the principles of Islamic teachings. As a multi-ethnic and multi-religious nation, we hold on to these values dearly, and we have done throughout our journey of nationhood. We believe that wasatiyah can and should contribute to building a more peaceful, secure, and equitable world. Accordingly, we call on the government of Myanmar to promote inter-religious and intercultural dialogue, to stem the spread of discrimination and prejudice against Muslims and members of ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities across the country. I hope that through our deliberations in these halls, we will collectively be able to propose actions and measures to address the situation of the Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar. It is the duty of the OIC to keep the international community focused on the plight of the Rohingyas, and I thank you all for accepting Malaysia's invitation to urgently discuss this today. Ladies and gentlemen, we fight for the rights of Rohingyas, just as we continue to do so for our Palestinian brothers and sisters. The adoption of Resolution 2334, which was promoted and co-sponsored by Malaysia at the United Nations Security Council, echoed around the world. Although Malaysia's term as a non-permanent member of the Security Council has ended, Malaysia will continue to play an active part as a UN member state in efforts towards finding a peaceful solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. We will continue to support the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people for an independent state of Palestine with the realization of two states, Palestine and Israel, living side by side, based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a new struggle that we must all come together to support for the Rohingyas and for an end to the pain, deprivation, and death that they have suffered for too long. We cannot stand by and do nothing. We represent 57 countries with a combined population of over 1.6 billion. Our charter enjoins us specifically to assist Muslim minorities and communities outside the member states to preserve their dignity, cultural, and religious identity. We must be equal to this challenge. We must show that this organization is truly the friend and guarantor of Muslims everywhere. We must show that while we may have our differences, the Ummah will come together. We will come together in the defense of our brothers and sisters in the time of need. Let us hope that Allah will bless our noble endeavor, and for the sake of the Rohingyas, for the sake of the Ummah, and for the sake of all humanity. I thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, the Honorable Dato'